Good night. Andrew Mahari here again. And I was just going to read another article that I wrote at Mental Health Matters in 2008. So, an oldie, but hopefully a goodie, I don't know. And it's called Awake from the Nightmare of Borderline Self-Absorption. The nightmare of borderline suffering is exacerbated by an unaware self-absorption that magnifies the pain of the core wound of abandonment in those with BPD and steals hope. It is a self-defeating cycle brought about by the absence of a known true self. Borderline personality disorder, BPD, contrives an intense battle between the false self and the longing for the reclamation of the lost self in a way that leaves in its wake an abyss of lamenting lostness within a false self-induced haze of self-absorption whose genesis lies within a fallaciously unreasoned and fragmented view of reality. The borderline is lost to each and every unfolding original moment, and this is the primary cause of suffering. And it's often subconscious. Self-absorption is a persisting, unrelenting preoccupation with self, your own thoughts or feelings, to the exclusion of everything else. And that happens with people with BPD because they don't have that self, so they have continued persisting, unrelenting preoccupation with the thoughts and the feelings, and they don't know why often. To the exclusion of everything else. When one is, I think I said that before, when one is self-absorbed, one does not have balanced view of what is shared reality unfolding in the present moment. Self-absorption is an omnipotent obliqueness habitually driven by the borderline false self. It is a dysfunctional and very circuitous way of attempting to be, but it's all the borderline has, unless until they get more therapy. That's the only way they can be. And that being is an even with of self. It is the insurgency of the ruminating negativity and protectiveness of the self-absorbed, dysfunctional false self against the subjugated, potentially functional true self, that fragmented, lost part of self. This nightmare of self-absorption, often experienced by those with BPD, can be awakened from when you choose to unstep patterned dichotomous ways in which you perpetually view and experience the world. It is the process of awakening from what is essentially no mind and being reborn into one's original mind. That's why everything, magical thinking, reigns for so many with borderline personality disorder, because magical thinking is really feeling and believing that all your feelings are really true and real. And like things that might be cognitively distorted and felt are real just because you feel them. So you really aren't in a mind, because where's your mind without yourself? It's going to wander off into this magical thinking and feeling that what you're feeling is actually what's actually happening. In the absence of being fully awake in your original mind, until you find your way to feeling this awareness and understanding of your true self, you will continue to suffer if you have BPD and to project much of your misinterpreted, cognitively distorted view of why you are suffering onto others' devastating relationships. You will continue to see what your own self-absorbed negative, limiting false self believes, magical thinking, a lot of the time, and not what is really happening, just as you will continue to hear what you think others are saying to you based upon your past and or your own interjected invalidator or abuser, the wounding parent. Usually, in 75% of cases, people go on to be diagnosed with BPD, and continue to fail to hear what people are actually saying to you in the here and now. So that way that everything gets misconstrued, taken personally as an insult, when people aren't doing that at all. That's what I'm talking about there. Your original mind is the true self of your human being. It is the seat of your enlightenment, ever so patiently awaiting your company. It is the authentic part of you that longs to clear a path to awareness and mindful acceptance of each unfolding original moment in the now. Original moments are the moments that we can experience mindfully for what they are, without attaching anything preconceived or dissociatively from the past, or expected them what they might have been expected to have been from the past to our hopes and wants from the future. So it's really about being in the now. And as Jon Kabat-Zinn, writing about Zen Master, I cannot pronounce it, Soensanim, in his book, this is Jon Kabat-Zinn's book, Coming to Our Senses, Healing Ourselves and the World Through Mindfulness. Excellent book. Describes a Zen master who would begin his talks by whacking a Zen stick on a table, offering no explanation, and moving right into what he was talking about. The point of this was to pave the way for each individual to have the opportunity to attempt to grasp that original moment of seeing and the original moment of hearing in his or her original mind before their thoughts or interpretations and emotions, and for people with BPD, magical thinking, feelings that are put across as if they are thoughts. Before these emotions and interpretations and the magical thinking pour in so quickly, that which is experienced primarily in one's own concepts about what one just saw or heard. That's what's so valuable, is really seeing and really hearing what really just happened in an original moment, each original here and now moment. Rather than experiencing what just happened, most people become lost to the original moment by what they think about and how they felt in response to it. What is felt and thought about, what is interpreted when Sanim whacks a stick on a table, is what each individual can bring to that moment. But a lot of people with BPD, you see, would be maybe triggered or traumatized by that. They would go back to the past. They would lose that moment. That moment, like countless other moments in our lives, is so often lost to the reality that, quote, we evaluate, we judge, we digress, we categorize, we react emotionally. And that was a quote from Jon Kabat-Zinn's book. End quote. We essentially lose the moment. We don't grasp the moment in the objective way. And we have lost our minds and have taken leave of our senses. Such a moment of unawareness colors what comes next. The tendency to stay lost. We have a tendency to stay lost. We fall into automatic patterns of thinking, we being people with BPD, and are feeling for long periods of time that we more often than not are unaware of. In this staying lost, those with BPD continue to abandon their pain. That's really kind of the purposeness of the lostness, of the escaping. And I do have an ebook at PhoenixRisingPublications.com called The Abandoned Pain of Borderline Personality Disorder. Of course, this is just not limited to those with borderline personality disorder by any means, but they experience it more intensely, more often, more frequently, and in more troubling ways, in painful ways. Of course, however, this is at the heart of the self-absorbed nightmare that many with BPD are living in what are often very unaware ways that are living proof of how lost to original mind and true self they really are. It is this fragmentation from true self that is then projected out onto others, and the borderline experience of the world causing painful disruption to attempts to be connected, stay connected, or relate to others, because no self from which to know how to consistently relate to others. People with BPD don't even really relate to themselves in a consistent way. ever-changing moods, ever-changing feelings, confusion, I hate you, don't leave me, approach avoidance conflict, splitting. Borderlines must awake from the nightmare of their own self-absorption, which is driven by a diabolical combination of their negative past experience and maladaptive pattern ways of conceptualizing their experiences, thoughts and feelings, interactions in life in ways that only perpetuate the pain and agony, excuse me, that they are suffering. Those diagnosed, pardon me, with BPD for whatever reasons have not been able to fully emotionally mature. They are stuck in some developmental stage that renders their ability, before therapy and personal responsibility taking, to relate in functional, adult, age-appropriate ways. It obliterates that possibility until and unless people get treatment. In this vicious circle of self-defeating, negative, maladaptive ways of thinking and feeling and behaving, those with BPD are often unaware of how they fall into their own nightmare of self-absorption. Like a truck stuck in muck, the more the borderline resists accepting what is in his or her life in the here and now, the more he or she spins his or her cognitively distorted thoughts like the wheels of the truck deeper and deeper into a daunting, desolate ditch of despair, of a self not known, not validated, and not understood. And this is my own writing, by the way. Just remember that. It is because I don't want you to think it's I'm reading somebody else's work. I'm not. It's my work. It is this unawareness, this negation of true self, of one's original mind, that contributes to the cloud and the color of the borderline's experience of life, which is so freaking bloody painful. Life is experienced as unbearable in this negative, narrow place where suffering is deemed endless. I know that because I once lived there. A couple decades plus some years ago, but it is also often the root source of borderline rage. Rage that not only exacerbates the borderline suffering, but that also causes suffering from those who care about them. Non-borderlines who are invisible often to the borderline self-absorption living on the other side of BPD, which is another ebook title of mine, available at Phoenix Rising Publications for loved ones. Suffering continues and seems endless because the borderline doesn't have the insight or awareness of what is fueling the truck stuck in the muck that is his or her self-gratifying, self-indulgent, and also self-defeating self-absorption. And by self-absorption, I'm not trying to say they don't care about anything else, but the rumination and the self-absorption, they're constantly trying to figure out what's going on with themselves. So I don't mean self-absorption in any negative, derogatory, or pejorative manner. This self-absorption is not mindful. It is hidden in the false self of the borderline. It is often in the subconscious or the unconscious. It is driven and kept alive in borderline fragmentation and lostness of the ego. The very self-absorption that sought to protect the psyche, the ego, the true self, the original mind, from invalidation, actual or perceived, and abandonment trauma, and abuse from unmet needs has instead relegated most, if not all, clear sense of what actually is through the very dichotomous thinking that makes what seem like it is be as it seems to the borderline. And dichotomous thinking is another way of saying black and white thinking, splitting. The illusions of self, fragmented from the whole. And the pain of that. Oh my God. I can tell you from the inside out, that hurts like hell. So the illusions of self, fragmented from the whole, the esoterically enigmatic guest in the house of self, lacking, makes vain attempts to conceal, or attempts in vain, to conceal itself, while all the while being the oblivious, yet obvious elephant in the room. Those with BPD resist so despairingly the welcoming in of even the most menacing guest to the reality of this being human experience they're having, to this guide beyond who comes to create the kind of change necessary to know what it is to have a life worth living and to recover from BPD, as I know, because I did that in 1995. I recovered. My life has been one of tremendous meaning and purpose and a myriad of wonderful things ever since. The guest house. And this is a quote from Rumi. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably, each emotion, really, people with BPD. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. Believe that. I found that out in my process when I recovered in 1995. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. End of the quote from Rumi. And I think that is so profound because it speaks to radical acceptance of everything that you're aware of right now if you have BPD, and that is the gateway to change. Your living in an unaware life has relegated you to being an unwelcome guest in your own house and your own being and your own soul. Talk about agony for people with BPD. Invite awareness in. Invite your abandoned pain back into your consciousness. Invite in the reality that you can accept where you are right now and how much you hurt right now in as a beginning step to make, how much pain you're in. Okay. As a beginning step to making healthy change. The kind of change that might not take away all your pain, at least not right away, but that will teach you that you can build a meaningful and productive life worth living in the midst of endurable pain as you learn how to endure it. Pain that does not have to be suffering unless you choose to let it be. And there is that delineation again that Linehan makes, that all pain is inevitable. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. Often an unconscious made choice with people with BPD. When you know yourself, your true self, you can then be much more open to others and to the world and your original mind and the here and now and the multitude of original moments life gifts us with to teach us, enhance us, open us, connect us to the world, to humanity, to each other, to God, to our spirit-filled selves, to help us grow and bring us the experience of joy, of peace, of a known self, of the here and now. Awareness is the key to awakening from the nightmare of self-absorbed, borderline suffering that's on a subconscious, unconscious level. In this awareness and acceptance of this awareness without resistance is the pathway to creating purpose-filled, healthy, connected relating, to coming to discover and know your original mind and your true self. As Bradshaw said, and I'm not quoting directly, to come back to the self, find the self. You come back to yourself has a lot to do with the fragmented, lost self, which is really the the dissociated from inner child. When you reclaim this, when you find this, when you go through this most painful, I won't kid you, recovery process from BPD, you then come home to this self that was there at a very early age before 2. You will come home to a self and you will know it for the very first time. And that's what happened in my recovery from BPD. And it was so, I wept with, there was pain, and then I wept with the joy of receiving back that self that I felt wholly at home with for the first time in my entire life. That's what awaits. Radical acceptance, mindfulness, change, paying attention to the here now moment, and reframing the negative lens of the agony of the woundedness of the core abandonment trauma and attachment trauma that creates and is a genesis by the age of 2 a borderline personality disorder, which is not a chemical imbalance or a brain disease or a lifetime sentence. So I hope that that was something that might inspire people with BPD to know there's so much to reach for. And what really all I said in that article is about, as I've said before, it's the obstacle that's in the way that is the way, as I believe Stoic philosophers have said. Can't remember which one, sorry. But also, I came to this myself in the process of my recovery from BPD years, like 2 decades plus ago, and I recovered in 1995, of knowing that what was in the way was the way. And I've said this before I even read a quote from some Stoic philosopher about this. I just kind of came to this myself many years ago because the pain that's in the way for people with BPD is the way. And so it's what's blocking you. It's the obstacle that you need to walk toward with support and therapy, of course. But it just awaits your choosing and your radical acceptance. And like Rumi said so eloquently, that I quoted the Guest House by Rumi there, that to welcome all guests to your house, even if it's a bit hollow, if you don't know yourself, if it's a bit, not stably known, but to welcome into that place inside your guest house where you're trying to find the self that should be there. All guests, pain, misery, sorrow, heartache, lostness, rage, and then start to welcome in peace, breaks from those feelings, and to not think that the other shoe is going to drop on your head because you're feeling something positive. Because positive for people with BPD is super scary until you grow into knowing that it's okay to feel that way. Because most people with BPD, up until a certain point, or some people never get past this point, tragically enough, it's a whole negative experience. It's very painful. It's a lost self. There's no joke about how painful this is. And again, no excuse for abuse, but people with BPD have really incredible woundedness that is all they know how to be, all they know how to do, the only way they know how to relate. And it does come up to that sum total of, in the active throes of BPD, being toxic relating and relating that's hurting others. But these people are hurting so bad that they don't really know they're hurting others because they don't have a self from which to know the difference between them and you, if you're a loved one. So I'm not making any excuses for abuse, but people with borderline personality disorder to that degree need to not only understand themselves, as I just read the article I wrote in 2008 and added some to it here off the top of my head, but it's really important to know that while those aren't excuses, there are some reasons, not justifying abuse, but that people with BPD do deserve empathy, even when you might be somebody who's been really traumatized by them, because that's going to add to your healing and recovery journey. And so the stigma that keeps borderline personality in such a pejorative, negative place that so many therapists don't even want to work with people with BPD, we need to keep fighting against it. And so for those of you who have BPD, come to my channel, please know that I'm here for you too. When I'm talking to loved ones, that's going to seem like an affront to you. And I apologize for that. I can't straddle the lines. It's one or the other side. I know them both. So right now, I'm speaking to people with BPD, and I hope that this will motivate you to think about what I said. And you can find that article on Mental Health Matters. Just search AJ Mahari Mental Health Matters. What was the title again? Awake from the nightmare of borderline self-absorption. Because maybe reading that a few times over, I read it as quickly as I could here because I'm aware of time and length of videos. But maybe if you read it, it might help you. And there are links to the various, ebooks and audio programs that I have. That there's lots there for people who are non-borderlines, just for lack of, saying a lot of words. And there are many resources there for people with borderline personality disorder as well. So I just wanted to say that because, and if you have BPD and you're seeing this video and you're on my channel, please, unless you're far down the line of recovery, you're going to get easily triggered by me talking to the other side, the non-borderlines, about people and how they are affected by people with BPD, then please just go to the front page of my YouTube channel here, scroll down to where it says AJ Mahari on BPD for borderlines. That's where you're going to hear me talking about, as I wrote this article, for people with BPD, hopefully to find some awakening, to think about things, to maybe have an aha moment that would be, you're trying to figure stuff out, find out how you can be helped, and you're getting help maybe, and hopefully that just jogs something that can gels with something you're thinking or starting to learn and not aware of, and then you have an aha moment. And the point is, so please, if you have BPD, don't focus on my videos for loved ones or other videos. Focus on the playlist on the front of my YouTube channel. Scroll down, AJ Mahari on BPD for borderlines, because there's also a playlist, AJ Mahari for BPD, on BPD for non-borderlines. So if you have borderline personality disorder, please watch those videos first, because I am there in those videos for you. And there's so many other videos I do for others and the other side, because I know both sides and I'm passionately empathic and caring about both sides. But if you come here with active borderline personality disorder and you're not able to face some things, or you don't know some things yet, you just aren't aware, no offense, but subconsciously a lot's going on you don't know about, you're going to be very hurt and very angry with me. And I don't, I can accept that, but I don't want you to have to experience that or be triggered by that. So I keep trying to put that out there. I have a playlist on BPD just for you if you have borderline personality disorder, and that's where you should start. And at phoenixrisingpublications.com, I have ebooks for people with BPD, which lots of loved ones read too, and then ones for loved ones, which people with BPD should not purchase. And then there are audio programs on both sides. So people who are loved ones often will purchase, loved ones audios or ebooks, and the ones I write for borderlines for more understanding. But if you have BPD and you want to purchase anything, phoenixrisingpublications.com, an audio or an ebook that I've put up there, please just look under audio BPD or ebooks for BPD, because that's for you. Looking at the opposite side too soon can be another traumatizing experience, and I don't mean ever to have somebody with BPD come to my channel and experience that. And there have been people who do, because they're watching the wrong videos. So don't just look to my recent videos, except in this case, and maybe one that I will put up right after or just before. If they're not for people with BPD, for you, if you have BPD, then you need to go back to the front page of my YouTube channel and look at AJ Mahari, scroll down, AJ Mahari on BPD for borderlines. That's where I'm there for you, okay? Because when you work on both sides and you know both sides like I do, people on both sides can get really upset, hurt, pissed off, just outright angry, because they're hearing the other side, whichever side, and so that's my dilemma, that I speak to both sides and I separate out in playlists. But if you just look at my recent videos, whether it's this one, some loved ones may take offense at, it's for people with BPD, or vice versa. Anyway, so I hope that was helpful. I hope it was somewhat inspirational. And that's why I decided to read a few of these here, because it can read really dry. And hopefully the way I read it out loud is more passionate and hopefully more of an emotional experience for those with BPD. So you wouldn't just go and read that maybe and think it's, really dry or something. But just know recovery from BPD is so possible. Believe in that and believe in your ability to find it if it still is elusive to you, because so much is lying dormant, waiting to come up from your subconscious early childhood experience. You need to welcome that. And the pain that is the obstacle that is in the way that everybody tries to escape, most people with BPD, I did for years in my late teens and early 20s, up to my mid, almost late 20s. But if you're trying to escape the very pathway you need to go to the pain and through the pain. It's amazing what can happen, I promise you. But it is painful, but you can learn to cope with that pain. I've been there. I did that. So I wouldn't tell you that if I didn't know it to be true from my absolute own personal experience. Take care now.